4:32. I guess we'll start. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe. I am new to the psychology master's program here at University of West Georgia. Thank you all for coming today. I know it's the end of the semester. It's like crunch time for a lot of us, so thank you for choosing to be here with me. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, thank you for choosing to watch this video over the myriad of people doing covers of your favorite songs, original comedy sketches, and let's not forget cat videos. It is, of course, your prerogative to change the video at any point to a cat video, so if you do, I won't judge you. But I do think, regardless of who you are, you might find something of value in my talk today. So it's kind of amazing, isn't it? Technologies like YouTube allow us to be privy to people's creative capacities. In fact, in the world of just music covers, I've seen a wide array of people doing anywhere from covers of a single song in 20 different styles to changing multiple different songs to the style of a 20s aesthetic. Unfortunately, I'm not here to talk about music covers, but I do find creativity to be kind of a central theme to my talk, and allowing that to be one of your fundamental modes to be important. When I first described my idea of the talk to Gary, I had to repeat myself. The importance of having a child's mind. We have, I think, an underlying assumption that as we grow older, it's necessary to shed all of that which likens us to children. The impatience, the naivete, the self-centered understanding of existence, and the quick emotional valence. While I do think it's beneficial to shed all these previously described tendencies, there is one strength that children have that I would argue none of us in this room, especially as master's students, can brag, and that is they know very little. I want everyone to hold on to this because I will come back to it later. To begin, I want to start with a relatively short aside and provide a small commentary on the education of today's youth, and work my way back to relevance for graduate students and the larger group of students of life. When I was in elementary school, I encountered Bloom's taxonomy, which, for those of you who don't know, are outlines, educational objectives, and more generally, levels of cognition when addressing material. It breaks this process down in 6 stages, namely remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. For example, one might start by memorizing the different animal kingdoms, then move on to understand the differences between these categories. We might then give the student an animal and ask them to apply these differences to categorize it. From there, we might move on analyzing why a certain animal is endangered, ask the student to evaluate the pros and cons of maintaining biodiversity, and in the end, we might ask the student to create a good way to go about dealing with different animals having differing levels of extinction. Regardless of whether teachers are actively using this model of understanding, this is a rough breakdown that does seem to occur. I noticed that throughout my educational experience, there's so much emphasis on remembering and understanding, a little bit of application, very little analysis and evaluation, and almost no creating. And in the same way people have come to misunderstand Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think the consensus is that this is a stepwise function, which would account for a lack of higher order learning. I remember thinking someday I will get the chance to be creative. Sadly, that day never seemed to come. And in academia, when I was finally given the chance, I felt ill-equipped and unwilling to explore for fear of getting bad marks. To be fair, since I first encountered this representation, they have since changed and updated the image so that it's not hierarchical, but more circular. But regardless, I don't find that intellectually synthetic efforts are fostered in classroom environments, especially at young ages. Now, this is all well and good, but how is this relevant to our current experiences as adults? The world is changing at a rapid and accelerating rate. It's imperative, now more than ever, to create citizens of tomorrow who can be adaptive rather than absorptive. Technical skills are taught and then become obsolete in a matter of 1 to 2 decades. New scientific discoveries shatter old understandings on a near daily basis. It's not enough to simply remember or understand incoming changes, but also to evaluate and create the paradigms of tomorrow. If we do not allow children to tap into creativity at an early age, much like an unused muscle, it will atrophy into adulthood. I use this word aloud because I believe it's an innate quality in all people. But regardless of the truth or falsity of that statement, and perhaps more importantly, I believe it's something that can be learned and developed. There exist so many books discussing the various ways to further creativity, and even businesses have begun to invest time and money to teach their employees. To those of us who wish to pursue research, remember that discovery and endeavors in human sciences are merely a continuation of the educational experience with pursuit of knowledge and truth, but just on your own terms. To others, remember that you will always be a student of life, and there will always be opportunities to be creative and to enrich your own life as well as the lives of others. To bring the talk back to my comment earlier, I would say that this gift of having learned very little is twofold. The first of which being a natural sense of wonder. To be honest, I believe this idea has fallen into the realm of trite yet misunderstood aphorisms. A childlike sense of wonder. When I was young, I remember so vividly reading a passage in a book that roughly went like this. To a baby tiger, everything is fresh. The world is a new place, and everything they encounter is new. I think a question about the nature of animal cognition is in here, but that's a talk for another day. What is relevant to the talk today is that for the rest of the day, I remember being so awestruck by that thought, and I remember having this meta sense of wonder, about wonder, while embodying what I was reading. When Maslow described B cognition, he described viewing things through an innocent eye. Because children are seeing things sometimes for the first time, when the child stares at something, he or she truly takes in all aspects of it with the understanding that no part is more important than the other. In doing so, we can avoid the pitfalls that many of us fall in of categorizing, labeling, and otherwise breaking down whatever it is that you're looking at. I used to find myself, when reading academic papers or other informative material, looking for weaknesses in the argument, which led to a very unengaged cutting off of myself from the author's overall message. I became disinterested in what was being addressed and instead focused on how I could fit or not fit its constituent parts into my previous understandings. If there was nothing congruent, I often dismissed it. How then does one get over this inability to have an innocent eye, having encountered so many things before? One might start by applying the Husserlian concept of bracketing, or to put it more generally, reserve judgment of something using previous systems of understanding, as it will limit your exploration. This is where the second strength of knowing little comes into play. Specifically, before we're taught to do so, we have the tendency to engage new information by being receptive rather than categorical. The mind of the child is free as opposed to being filled with extant systems. In this free state, one is more able to draw connections that otherwise wouldn't exist when concepts are separated into different categorical bins. It is therefore critical not to be beholden to old schemas and not to work to fit your understandings and discoveries into previous paradigms. I'm of the opinion that the purpose of communication is to convey information however you can. So to give a less esoteric example and to maybe illustrate this further, so when you go into a restaurant and most of the items on the menu are unfamiliar to you, you have two basic options. One, you can embrace the experience and ask for whatever is their special or whatever they are known for, or you can get something that you are familiar with. Regardless of what you decide, when you finally get what you ordered, you can either taste it and embrace it for what it is, or you can be resolute in your inability to enjoy it because it doesn't match your prior understanding. I should mention, for those of you who don't know, that I actually come from a cognitive behavioral background. In fact, my senior seminar was on behavior and cognition. My professor at the time was very heady, and at times the articles he had us read before class were not very accessible. Every class he would challenge us to assess what the given article or articles had established with its results. However, the most interesting class to me was one day we were asked to approach an article discussing pigeon pecking behavior, which seems antithetical to everything we had learned up until that point. He seemed to leave the discussion open for an uncomfortably long time, while essentially negating the various interpretations of the results. And at its conclusion, he finally confided that the results were both not in line with any established understandings and were also never replicated since. I think my purpose in including this anecdote was to remind us not to err in the opposite direction. And perhaps sometimes in your findings, you will also come across something that doesn't even fit under any mode of understanding that you'd be able to develop. I couldn't find a good transition here, so let's just talk about fun. When you ask children when they develop interests and hobbies, why they do it, you're often met with a simple phrase: because it looked fun. In a world that demands results and productivity, we seem to shed this compulsion because we believe it to be hurtful to the process. Over the summer, I got some extra cash by tutoring my cousin's child how to play guitar. Now keep in mind, he's 5 years old, so there was a number of factors at play here. The kind of muscular memory it took to keep his fingers on the frets, the kind of simultaneous plucking that needed to go on, the introduction of tonality and rhythm, along with a number of other things. Needless to say, I went in with very low expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. However, my cousin was so preoccupied with the goal of learning songs that she would get annoyed that he didn't play something that he'd successfully done the prior week. I found very quickly that he was getting burnt out, and towards the end of my time with him, he spent more time showing me his toys and seemed reluctant to pick up the guitar. I voiced my concerns to her, and I told her that if he wasn't having fun, I didn't find it to be a useful practice. And ultimately, I think I failed him because after I left, I don't believe that he continued to play on his own. I say that I failed him because I think I failed to merge productivity and play. So all this talk of play seems rather trivial, but far from it. I think it's a very serious matter. Only in really playing with a medium and pushing it to its limits, in positing the possible, are artists able to create something that is fruitful and novel. In human sciences and psychology, the medium might be human experience or underlying cognitive processes, but whatever it may be, without this playful process, possibilities are lost, and to me, this is kind of the root of reductive thought. In an effort to transcend and unknow some of these preconceptions that we've developed over the course of our life, I think all we really need to do is reconcile with the sense of wonder that we once used to be so familiar with, and to reconcile the ability to kind of see deeply and truly things as they are when they're brand new to us. Thank you, Gary, for setting up these meetings and giving me the opportunity to be creative and kind of explore some of these views that I find compelling. I had fun during this process, teasing out just what it was that I found to be strengths in the child's mind, what that entails, and hopefully how it can be implemented. So, thank you.